Some relationships don't fall apart loudly, they fade in silence, in avoidance, in things that never got repaired. Because the truth is, relationships will always have conflict. That's not a flaw, that's part of being human. I like to think about relationships like a garden. If you've ever gardened, you know some plants thrive next to each other, like tomatoes and basils, for example. Basil is often a decoy for the pests, while tomato shades the basil. But even the healthiest and most balanced garden will still have problems that come up. Weeds grow, leaves get damaged, bugs show up. No garden is perfect. What matters is the maintenance. So you check the plant, the soil, the environment, the weather, and even ask, is this the right season for this plant? You remove what's harmful. Relationships work the same way. We will make messes in relationships, that's inevitable. But messes can be cleaned up, and cleaning them up doesn't mean pretending they didn't happen. It means tending to what was damaged. If you ignore the mess long enough, though, something else happens. Mold grows, and mold doesn't stay contained, it spreads. And once it spreads, it takes more work to remove. Sometimes it requires constant maintenance because certain conditions make it come back again and again. Ignoring harm doesn't make it disappear, it just allows it to grow. And people can't be ignored forever. There are only so many times someone can forget to call back, ignore messages, gossip about them, make harsh judgments, or put in the bare minimum effort emotionally. Before people start asking themselves the quiet but life changing question, is this relationship still worth it? Hi, it's me, Kimberly. Today's going to be a heavy episode. I hope it reached to the people who need to hear it the most. Before we go any further, quick note. This podcast is for reflection and conversation, not professional advice. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and listen in a way that feels supportive for you. The question at the center of this episode is this: why is repair the difference between a relationship that heals and one that harms? Now, not all relationships end because of harm. Sometimes people just depart naturally. Life changes, people move, priorities shift. Sometimes it's not damage, it's just distance. Sometimes it's loss of momentum. But family relationships, that's where things get complicated because for a long time, we've been taught this slogan, because we're family, is supposed to fix everything. And honestly, for me, that line doesn't work for me anymore. When I was a child in elementary school, the sense of safety I had in my family shattered. There were accusations made involving me, and because of that, I had to go through medical examination as a child. What I remember most about that moment wasn't even the exam itself, it was the feeling of being completely alone during it and not knowing what to do. And afterwards, the doctor gave me a Coca-Cola bear plushie toy. It was Christmas time, and I think the doctor could tell how overwhelming that experience had been for me. Maybe she hoped the toy would soften it. But for a long time, I hated that bear. It sat in my room like a reminder of something I didn't understand and I didn't have words for. That same year, Santa gave me everything on my Christmas list. And for most kids, that would have felt magical. But I remember just sitting there surrounded by gifts and feeling absolutely nothing. Not joy, not excitement, just empty. Around that time, I was told something that shaped me deeply. Don't talk about this, Kimberly. CPS could take you away. So I stayed silent. I couldn't talk about it at home. I couldn't talk about it in therapy either because the same warning followed me there. And if I did try to talk about it, I was told therapy must not be working because I'm only getting worse. And remember, CPS will take you away. Eventually, I became a kid who cried too much in the therapy office, and one day I overheard something that stayed with me for years. Somebody said if Kimberly hadn't been born, none of this would have happened. I was just a child. And looking back now, I have language for what that was. That was psychological abuse. Around that time, I started gaining weight, and part of my mind created a belief that felt protective. If I had made myself undesirable, maybe I could keep myself safe. I told myself ugly kids don't get hurt like that. Later in life, after another experience, that same pattern came back. Cutting my hair short, trying to look less feminine, trying to disappear. Because somewhere deep inside me was the belief that if I could become unnoticeable, I could become safe. Now I understand that's not how harm works. But children don't have the language to understand trauma. We adapt in whatever helps us feel safe, helps us survive, even if those ways follow us longer than they should. That pain didn't stay in childhood, it followed me into adulthood. For most of my 20s, I tried to earn love. What could I do for them? How could I make their life easier? It didn't really foster the best relationships with people and didn't necessarily find the greatest relationships because of it. So, yeah, I rebelled sometimes. Yeah, I made mistakes, and I can say I did do harm. I was also someone who didn't know any better. I was not taught how to repair after conflict. Someone was always right and someone was always wrong. There was no middle. And whoever got emotional first lost automatically. So I grew up blunt. Some people called it bravery when I spoke up about injustice, but the truth is, I did not have tact. I just had honesty without safety. And I didn't have anyone in my family I truly felt safe leaning on. I was told I was too emotional, too sensitive, too much. I was always being corrected. And now, as an adult, I ask different questions. How was a child supposed to process adult level trauma? Why do we expect children to carry things even adults struggle to unpack? For years, I thought some childhood memories were sweet, watching movies in the basement, playing with kittens at relatives' house. But looking back now, I can see something else. The adults were upstairs, the kids were outside, and I was alone. Isolation doesn't always look obvious when you're a child. Sometimes it looks like being included, but not really seen. Even family vacations were hard for me. New environments overwhelmed me. Everything happened on everyone else's schedule. And when I struggled, I was called dramatic or spoiled. But here's what I understand now: conflict didn't destroy those relationships. The absence of repair did. Because for me, conflict without repair makes people feel like they're going crazy. Later in life, I found myself wondering something. How could my husband and my children love me even on my worst days? When growing up, one bad day meant punishment or silence. After my first child was born, postpartum hit me hard. For 2 years, I felt like I was failing. And then something painful but important happened. I started to see the same pattern show up in my own parenting. Timeouts when emotions were too big, isolation when behavior felt overwhelming, and it broke my heart. But that moment forced me to pause, to look deeper, to learn. I found out my daughter was having medical needs that were affecting her emotional regulation. And I realized something else too. I had never been taught how to build structure in my life. School had been the only place I really experienced stability. So I started having to learn it as a mother. But the final shift in my family relationship came from something that seemed small. I had two simple requests. Please stop sharing my personal stories. Those are mine to tell. And please stop giving unsolicited advice on while I'm navigating postpartum. Those questions were met with confusion and eventually something familiar. I'm sorry you feel that way. Then silence. And then, like clockwork, I love you. Kids grow up fast. We miss the girls. No repair, just a reset button. But relationships don't work like that. You don't get to skip the damage and jump straight back into connection. Without repair, conflict becomes wounds that never close. Repair requires acknowledgement, accountability, and changed behaviors. Not perfection, but an effort, consistent effort. And sometimes rebuilding trust takes years. And sometimes the person who hurts decides they can't come back. That doesn't make them better. It means they choose healing and they may not see the possibility to feel both safety and trying again with the relationship. Once I started seeing this pattern, I noticed it everywhere, even in moments that were supposed to be joyful. My wedding became a source of tension. At times, it felt like my husband and I were side characters in our own story, being called Bridezilla because I didn't want to be late to appointments. Later, my baby shower felt the same. And eventually, I realized something. Pretending everything is fine isn't love, and I wasn't doing anyone any favors. Someone always has to pay the emotional cost, and for the longest time, that person felt like it was me. And I had to face something difficult. There is no shining knight coming to save me because I am the only knight that can save me. People can help me feel safe and do the right things, but at the end of the day, someone can set me up for success, and I still choose to be harmed. It would have been nice to feel supported instead of trying to patch up the cracks like Bruno and Encanto, while at the same time being treated like the problem. But unfortunately, life doesn't always wrap up like they do in movies. And eventually, the question stops being what happened to me and becomes what am I going to do with what happened to me? That's where repair matters because repair is what tells someone you're safe here. You matter. We can fix this together. Without that, even if love exists, even if history exists, even if good intentions exist, something still breaks. So, back to the question, why is repair the difference between a relationship that heals and one that harms? Conflict isn't what damages a relationship. Avoidance does, deflection does, silence does. Conflict is just the moment something went wrong. Repair decides what happens next. When repair happens, relationships grow stronger, trust deepens, people feel seen. Sometimes connection becomes stronger because of the repair. But when repair doesn't exist, nothing actually resolves. The pain doesn't disappear, it just gets buried, and buried pain doesn't stay quiet forever. That's why adult children leave, not because they don't care, because they tried. They explained, they waited, they hoped. And eventually, they realize they were the only ones trying to repair something that requires two people. And the truth is, children don't stop needing their parents, they stop feeling safe with them. Repair isn't about perfect. We know that. It's about turning back towards the person you hurt and saying, I see it now. I'm listening. I want to do differently. Because without that, love doesn't feel like love. It feels like something you have to survive. Thanks again for listening to my rambles. Welcome to Thinking Out Loud. I'm Kimberly. I don't have all the answers, and I'm okay with that. If this felt familiar, uncomfortable, or oddly relatable, you're probably in the right place. If you're looking for a community of people navigating balance and asking honest questions, follow along. We'll keep thinking, we'll keep growing, and we'll keep asking questions together.